Hello and welcome to Africa Day at the Atlantic Council. My name is Jim Jones and I'm the Executive Chairman Emeritus of the Council. Africa Day marks the founding of the African Union and serves as an important commemoration of African independence and solidarity. It's a day of optimism, it's a day of reflection. And we're reminded of the importance of multilateral institutions and the important role that the African Union has played in the continent's political and economic development and its global relationships. During the 2020 campaign and upon taking office, President Biden and his administration have emphasized the importance of diplomatic engagement with the global community, and this has very much included the continent of Africa. This was underscored by President Biden's remarks on the occasion of the 34th African Union Summit in February, when he reinforced America's commitment to the region. We're very privileged today to be joined by one of the President's most important advisors on Africa, Ms. Dana Banks. Ms. Banks serves as Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Africa at the National Security Council, with a 20-year career at the State Department, then posts across the continent at the highest levels of the Africa Bureau. Dana undoubtedly brings the expertise and operational acumen to mobilize Africa policy from the White House. Today's conversation will be moderated by the recently appointed Director of the Atlantic Council's Africa Center, Ambassador Rama Yad. As a former French minister, she comes with a breadth of experience and expertise to bridge our communities. Félicitations, madame, et bienvenue à votre poste qui est très important. If you would like to join the discussion, please use the hashtag #PoundAfricaDay. And before we go to Ms. Banks, I'm pleased to welcome Ambassador of the African Union to the United States, Ms. Hilda Suka Mafudze, for opening remarks. A Zimbabwean diplomat and former member of parliament, she is the African Union's voice in Washington on a day when we recognize Africa's strategic value, immense global contributions, and we look forward to the future of the U.S.-Africa policy. I cannot imagine a more suitable emissary to speak for the moment. So, Madam Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you, General James L. Jones, Junior Executive Chairman Emeritus, for your kind introduction. I want, through you, to express my sincere gratitude to the Atlantic Council leadership for convening this event and commend my sisters, ambassadors, Yade and the Honorable Dana Banks. As Special Assistant to the United States President, for your strong commitment to a visionary and strategic U.S.-Africa partnership. I want to express particularly my high appreciation to the Atlantic Council for coinciding the launch of the African Conservation Series with the celebration of Africa Day. The Africa Union, its member states, citizens, members of the Diaspora, and friends of Africa commemorate all over the world today the founding of the Organization of African Unity on May 25, 1963 in Addis Ababa, precursor of the African Union celebration that takes place under the theme of arts, culture, heritage, levers for building the Africa we want. The choice of the theme of this year reflects the African Union recognition of the instrumental role that arts, culture, and heritage can play as catalysts for the sustainable socio-economic development and the integration of the continent and the achievement of the objectives of the African Union Agenda 2063. Aspiration 5 of Agenda 2063 reaffirms Africa's strong cultural identity, common heritage, values, and ethics as critical factors for Africa's re-emergence on the global stage. These values are of African Renaissance, Pan-Africanism, and solidarity. These values are key to building today the Africa we all want. As you recently indicated, Ambassador Yade, when you came last month to the African Diplomatic Corps presenting the vision of the Africa Center that you lead, Africa is a strategic continent, and no global challenge can be solved without this generation of Africans. I agree with you. I would add to that the role of the African Union, the premier continental organization and key interlocutor in international diplomatic arenas, has become critical and essential in addressing these challenges now that Africa is a key actor in the center of the global governance system. Before shedding more light on the importance of the theme of this year and its significance, allow me to take this opportunity to highlight that Africa is grateful for the strong bipartisan support that our continent has enjoyed over the years in both the legislative and executive branches of the United States government. US Africa policy is unique in its bipartisanship, and there has been a remarkable continuity in both houses for Congress on the US agenda in Africa. It is important in this particular juncture that we all work together to revitalize our bilateral, regional, and multilateral cooperation. I strongly believe that all the stars are aligned today to take US-Africa relations to a higher and strategic level of engagement for the best interest of both sides. The message that the US President, the Honorable Joseph Biden, conveyed in advance of the recent African Union Summit to our heads of state and government underscored his administration's commitment to rebuilding partnership around the world and re-engaging with international institutions like African Union. Our chairperson of the Commission, H.E. Musa Faki Muhammad, in his response to this message, reiterated that the African Union looks forward to resetting the strategic AU-US partnership on the basis of mutual respect and our shared values of international cooperation for a safer, healthier, and a more just world. We also commend the active engagement of members of the US Congress and their readiness to support further investments in a stable and secure and resilient Africa and in the capabilities and capacities of African institutions to address the root causes of fragility. The AU is confident that the United States will continue to enable African solutions by building Africa's capacity at the national, regional, and continental levels. Engagement with Africa benefits, strategic engagement with Africa benefits both the United States and Africa. We all want our trade and investment relationship to reflect the economic standing of the US as the world's leading economy and major source of foreign direct investment, and the rising profile of Africa as the next frontier of global economic growth. It is important that our joint efforts should be geared towards supporting regional and continental initiatives, in addition to the important bilateral ones, so that available resources should benefit Africans in a sustainable manner. Africa has continental frameworks, policies, and strategies in virtually every area of importance to our development. We also do not start on a clean slate. We have 58 years of experience from which to draw lessons. The Year of Arts, Culture, and Heritage that we celebrate reflect, as indicated at the beginning of my remarks, the African Union recognition of the instrumental role that arts, culture, and heritage can play as catalysts for the sustainable socio-economic development and integration of the continent and the achievement of the objectives of the African Union Agenda 2063. We are glad that our celebration this year coincides with the continental launch of the entry into force of the Charter for African Cultural Renaissance of 2006. The main focus areas of the Charter are promotion of African identity, shared values, the spirit of Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance, development of the creative economy of the continent, protection and conservation of African work heritage sites, and increasing of African state sites in the World Heritage List, development and continued dissemination of regional and continental programs for the promotion of African identity, shared values, cultural and creative industries, and heritage. And I want to conclude my remarks by underscoring the importance we attach to working with the Atlantic Council and the key US stakeholders to make African creative economies more attractive to US investments and ensure that creative arts are major contributors to Africa's growth and transformation through job creation and the social inclusion. Such employment generation will be vital for Africa, which by 2035 is projected to have more working age population than the rest of the world combined, requiring the creation of 20 million new jobs each year. Africa has a unique opportunity to leverage the full potential of its creative economy. Let us work together to capitalize on the long-standing and the deep historic and cultural relations between our nations, leverage Africa's unique advantages, including its diversity and widespread diaspora, as well as the US thriving creative economy, to build together more sustainable cultural and creative industries and partnerships for the best interest of our people. I thank you for your kind attention. Over to you, Ambassador Yade.
Thank you, Excellency. According to the historian of Burkina Faso, Joseph Kizerbo, every generation must set its own stakes. I personally believe that the issue of African integration is worth fighting for. African integration is not just an economic issue. In reality, it is much broader. And he says, African countries must reconstitute themselves as an entity, an identity, and a personality. Hi, everyone. May 25th, Africa Day, we celebrate the founding of the Organization of the African Unity. This mission mentioned by Joseph Kizerbo, I would like to make it mine in my role as a director of the Atlantic Council's Africa Center. And I wanted to seize this opportunity of Africa Day to mark this new step in the life of the Africa Center. But today is as well the anniversary of George Floyd's death, and I wanted us to remember. Thank you to General Jones for being the founder of the Africa Center 10 years ago. Thank you to Her Excellency, Mrs. Ambassador Suka Mafudze, for agreeing to partner with Atlantic Council for this special day. For me, after a Senegalese youth, a professional and political career in France, I continue my global journey by putting the foot on a third continent and live this new step in my life. And I thank Fred Kemp and Damon Wilson for their trust as an achievement of what I have always dreamt of, support my birth continent, and maybe a part of the American dream. Today, this American dream has the face of our first special guest, Ms. Dana Banks, Special Assistant to the President Biden and Senior Director for Africa at National Security Council. Ms. Banks, attendees from Africa, Europe, and America, all this. Welcome to this live session. Ms. Banks, I was mentioning an American dream. I will come back to it. but there is a breaking news since yesterday, Mali. While we expected peaceful transition with a new government, it appears that the President Bandao and the Prime Minister Mokhtar Wan had been arrested. What is it about? A coup? A coup in the coup? A contre-coup? Do you know what's going on in Mali?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you for having me, and congratulations on your new role, Ambassador Yad. We are deeply concerned about the reports coming out of Mali from yesterday, and our ambassador on the ground there in Bamako has been working together with partners, with the UN, with ECOWAS, with the French, the Germans, the British, and other counterparts in the EU to call for the unconditional and immediate release of the president and the prime minister, as well as the defense minister, who we understand was also illegally taken into custody. What it's about is instability, and instability in in Mali leads to greater instability in the Sahel. And I think this makes the case for why we have to work together, the United States, with like-minded partners in the region to ensure that stability is maintained.
Of course, we'll come back to the Sahel in a few minutes with our senior fellow Abdul Salam Bello. But let's come back to you, Ms. Banks. Your African experience, you seem to know a lot and to have a great experience on West Africa, obviously, but on Africa as well, the entire continent. You involved me when we spoke. The first time we spoke, you told me that your first experience in Africa was in Senegal. Right. I don't know if we are going to talk Wolof, but you know,
it would be a short conversation, I tell you.
Maybe you remember a few words, but more seriously, what led you to Senegal? What led you to Africa? What's the sense, the meaning of your commitment during all this career on the African continent?
Thank you for that question. The only words that I can remember Wolof is Nangadef.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Magnifique.
Very good. No, so I was an intern actually at our U.S. Embassy in Dakar in the summer of 1999. And that was part of my education and my fellowship as a Pickering Fellow. And I went on to join the State Department in the fall of 1999. So that's over 20 years ago now. But, you know, having set foot in Africa for the first time in Senegal, there was something that just, you know, I couldn't let go of. And obviously, you know, I had a great interest in studying the continent and studying international relations as a student at Spelman College. And there we would have diplomats in residence come and talk to us, such as Ambassador Elam Thomas, who went on to become our ambassador to Senegal. And I heard her speak this eloquent French and talk about, you know, her work in diplomacy, and that inspired me to this career. So I joined the Foreign Service, and I'd served in other posts, but it wasn't until I'd started serving in Africa and covering countries in Africa, both from Washington and serving overseas, and coming in contact with mentors like Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, like Jendai Fraser, that I really started to see that women who looked like me working on policies and issues that I cared about, that I inspired that I could be what they were. So, and now today, serving at the White House as the Senior Director for Africa, I hope to equally inspire and show other women who look like me that they too can have careers working on issues that they really care about.
You say a lot in a few sentences, so I would like to ask you, maybe catch your last sentence to ask you about President Biden at the White House. Do you think that he intends to visit African countries, which would be a difference with his predecessor?
Well, as you know, I mean, this administration came into office at a moment of historic challenges, a global pandemic, crushing economic downturn, and a crisis of social injustice, as well as a deepening climate emergency. And I must say, you mentioned it in your intro, I think it's quite poignant that we're here today on May 25th, Africa Day, but it's also the one-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And later today, President Biden will be receiving the Floyd family at the White House. And while we recognize that the jury's decision in his murder was a huge step forward for justice. We still have a lot to do in this area, and the administration is committed to that work. But as we continue to address those domestic issues, this administration has also laid a foundation for renewed engagement internationally. And that includes, obviously, with Africa. So first, the administration seeks to revitalize our partnership with our partners, with countries in Africa, in order to advance our shared interests and values. And that partnership we would like to root in mutual respect. So we do expect that there will be engagement, and as there already has been at various levels of this administration with our counterparts in Africa.
And we hope to see him on the ground, on the African continent, of course. Africa, the new frontier, said earlier, Ambassador Hilda, 1 in 4 of the world's people will be sub-Saharan African in 2050. A middle class that will reach the billion. That's huge. The world's free trade, largest free trade zone in the world. A growing mobile phone market, 44% last decade per year. And however, since I'm in Washington, D.C., I have noticed that my U.S. interlocutors are most interested in my speeches on Africa when I raise the competition with China, more than a change of tone. Don't you think that the true respect due to the African continent is maybe to consider it for what it is? I mean, a strategic continent, and not because it's the battleground of a competition with China?
No, that's absolutely correct. I think it would be, one, we want to avoid a narrative-driven approach to where we view Africa as a continent or a problem to be solved, but rather a partner engaging in mutual respect in a respectful way, but also seeking to create and seize upon the opportunities, all of the opportunities that Africa has to offer in terms of engagement, in terms of economic engagement and trade, and many of the areas that the ambassador also highlighted in her speech. And so we don't see it as a competition. We see it as, a promotion of our values and the way that the United States does our foreign policy and how we engage with partners overseas. And that's the lens through which we will engage with Africa. We will help African countries, combat the effects of a global pandemic of the COVID-19 virus. We will bolster two-way trade and engagement with the continent through initiatives like Prosper Africa. Yeah. We will help countries on the continent address the challenges posed by climate change. We will work through conflicts and help to improve stability in the region. And lastly, we will combat corruption on the continent. We promote inclusivity and working to advance democracy and governance and the rule of law on the continent.
You're absolutely right to stress the differences between China and the United States. But let's talk about maybe the dollar, the major difference between you and the Chinese. The battleground about the dollar is on the African continent. So we have the feeling that it's a matter of national security for the United States to be in that competition. And no one seriously takes the Chinese when they claim they are the first economy in the world, because their currency is not so strong like the dollar. So they know that, and they may consider they have 20 years to unseat the leader currency. And their weapon, Chinese digital currencies, launched recently in the African continent. So do you have this strategy to save the dollar, the heart of the U.S. leadership on economy?
Look, with the number of young people on the continent who are connected and who are, mobile money is used widely and are really, seizing that digital space, we are looking at ways to seize on that moment to make sure that, that everyone on the continent is able to be more connected and capable and therefore being able to cooperate with the United States on our shared interests and values. But no, that is I think it's a very useful useful market. It's a very useful point you made, but it's a key market, and we want to make sure that we are providing particularly not just the youth, but focusing on the youth, because as we know, the youth are connected, and it really helps them and helps the economy when they're able to be connected in a valuable way to help promote economic development as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting to see behind the currencies battle something more important, the people, through the commitment of the young Africans in the economy. When we think about these young African people, we think about their future, and in their future, there's the debt. The debt. A recent summit took place in Paris on the financing of African economies. My question is, do the United States trust Africa? I mean, I'm thinking about the high level of prime risk, which is responsible for not the level of the debt that is not so strong. It's lower than the European debt, but I mean the repayment of interest is out of control because these prime risks, and Chinese prime risks are lower than Western prime risk. And that explains a lot why they cannot have plans for recovery for their economies during the pandemic, in the contrary of what's happening right now in the United States or in Europe. My question is, don't you think it's unfair, all the more given the economic growth of this continent? And once again, this stigma comes from Western countries, not Chinese. And we often talk about the need to change the narrative on Africa. Don't you think we need to change the rules on Africa, about Africa?
That's a good question. I think when you talk about recovery from economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, we stand ready to partner with African countries to ensure that they are rebuilding their economies through various methods. One method that we have, one tool that we have in our toolbox is Prosper Africa, and we are reinvigorating Prosper Africa and giving it the teeth that it needs to really help African countries to take advantage of the trade and investment between our two countries, to attract more trade and investment, to help with the enabling environment, working through the newly formed African Continental Free Trade Area, and working and supporting that, supporting more financing through especially climate-friendly financing to help African economies not just recover, but also secure a future for their countries.
Of course. I have a last question before we give the floor to our other guests. We are talking about about hard power, currency, trade and everything. But there is a soft power on the African continent. Don't you think that culture, creative industries, as mentioned by my sister ambassador to the African Union, Hilda, don't you think that culture should be in the center of the U.S. foreign policy? On this, you guys, Americans, you don't have any competitor. So why not put culture in the center of your foreign policy, knowing that on the other side of the Atlantic, there is an African soft power about culture? And do you share that vision that soft power is the new hard power?
I think you're right. And I think that culture has always been a wonderful way to connect members of the African diaspora here in the United States with their their brethren and sistren overseas on the continent. So I think it's something that we definitely use. You see it with sports diplomacy, for example. You know, the recently launched NBA in Africa League that was launched in Rwanda, but also through initiatives like our Young African Leaders Initiative, which is celebrating its 10-year anniversary and hosting a summit this week. So the connections, the educational, the cultural connections will continue and have always been one of the bedrocks of our engagement with Africa.
Yes, thank you for recalling that right now in Kigali is, you know, an African basketball league is launched by the NBA. Warm welcome to this new African league launched by Amadou Gallo Fall. So thank you for reminding us that culture is still about sports. I'd like to share this conversation with our other guests. The first one is the Group Managing Director of and CEO of the Eastern and Southern African Trade and Development Bank, Mr. Admasou Tadesse, an important partner of the Africa Center, who is having a very important role not only in Eastern and Southern Africa, but in the whole African continent. President Admasou, I think you would like to come back to the hard power through a question on security. The floor is yours.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Ambassador Yada, for this special occasion and for the opportunity. I had one question to the Honorable Banks, and the question is, as Africa continues to grow in relevance globally, as you've also remarked, and as we continue to embark further on regional integration at the continental level, what is some of the latest thinking on U.S. engagement and cooperation around security and stability in the Africa region, and particularly so in the context of the new spirit of multilateralism and increased terrorism, which we're witnessing now further down south in Mozambique, in addition to the eastern, central, and western regions of the continent? Sorry if it's a bit of a long question, but I had to put it into context.
Not at all, President. Welcome, Ms. Banks.
Great, thank you. So I think it's sort of a broad swath when we talk about combating challenges and terrorism throughout Africa and security. But as I said before, you know, security in the Sahel, for example, security in Mali leads to security in the Sahel and leads to a broader secure Africa. But as we do see these pockets in southern Africa and northern Mozambique, for example, where there are increasing threats to that security, it's important for the U.S., and we are working with our regional partners who are most closely affected by the impacts of those of that terrorist threat, and to try to shore up governments who need assistance with combating that threat, because you know it's important to note that you know a lot of the things that this administration is doing on Africa is not compartmentalized for Africa in terms of just for Africa. Africa is interwoven throughout all of our foreign policy. So when we look at global threats, we're looking at it through a holistic approach, and that's the way that we are addressing some of the challenges in Africa and working with regional institutions and multilateral organizations, but also like-minded partner countries who have a vested interest in ensuring stability and security in the region as well.
Yeah, that's very important to hear. It seems what's happening there is an Africanization of the jihad, you know, on the African continent. That's something we did not see at the very start, but in this process, there is links, connections found between South American drug traffickers and terrorist networks in Africa. So that's something you should tackle, I think. But let's continue this conversation about security with our senior fellow with the Africa Center, Abdul Salam Bello. He is currently alternate executive director of the Africa Group at the World Bank Board of Directors. He is an expert on the Sahel and has a question about that. Abdul, up to you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rama. Good morning. Thanks. Very proud also to have you on board. Ambassador Riyad started by talking about Mali, so I want to widen a little bit regarding the Sahel region. As you have also noticed, over the last years, the region has been suffering from various issues such as chronic insecurity, impact of climate change, food insecurity, not to forget also political and social unrest, to name a few. So in this context, actually, I would like to have your perspective on how would you see the right balance regarding the US support on the humanitarian development and peace nexus in the Sahel. And building on this question, I will be also interested to have your view on how the Biden administration is or will leverage its role in the multilateral system through mechanisms such as the multilateral development banks or other institutions to mobilize also international support for the Sahel. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So your specific question on the Sahel and how we are leveraging humanitarian assistance as well as democracy and governance programming, and I think it's integral. I think it goes hand in hand. But the real question I think you're asking is about the root causes of instability in the Sahel, being the lack of governance and the lack of governments to be able to provide for their people, which is fomenting a lot of the instability. So I think when we talk about ways to address that and looking at assistance, not just humanitarian assistance, but also democracy and governance programming to strengthen institutions, democratic institutions who are not providing or who are unable to provide for their populace without some support. And that's important because if you're just addressing one element of the problem, the instability, and you're not getting to the cause, then it just becomes a cycle, unfortunately. And we're looking at a case where there are some trends, particularly further west and towards the littoral states in West Africa, where there have been some concerns about sort of democratic trends going in the wrong direction. And so again, it's not too late to go in to try to work with those governments, work with civil society, supporting civil society, because those are the actors that can help promote change and help to fill the void where or call on their governments to provide more services where they haven't been, to be more responsive to their publics, to hopefully stem the tide of instability. So that's the approach that we're taking through our assistance and our engagement, and not just in the Sahel, but also in littoral West Africa.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. What is very interesting here in your answer is the American commitment on the Sahel, because a few months or years ago, we heard about the possibility of withdrawal from the Sahel. And you are still there. I think that French people who try to convince you to stay would be happy to hear that you feel involved in what's happening. It's going on this ground. But as Abdul said, maybe we should have a serious look on the what you call the causes of the crisis in the Sahel, and work on the long-term social and economic development. And we are launching at the Africa Center a program on this specific issue, how we can address the populations and try to find solutions for the Sahelian population.
Wonderful.
You just listened Abdul Salam Bello. He's one of ours. We tried this morning to give the floor to our senior fellow from the Africa Center. It's a way for us to introduce to our crew at the Africa Center. Another talent for the Africa Center is Cameron Hudson. I hope to talk about Africa as a land of opportunity, but we are talking about land of risk, since, I don't know if things will be improved with Cameron Hudson, but he's a senior fellow of the Africa Center and former chief of staff to the Special Envoy for Sudan and Director for African Affairs on the National Security Council. I think you know each other. He leads our rule of law pillar. He has a question on democracy.
Thank you, Rama, and good morning, Dana. It's nice to see you, if not in person. As Rama said, I wanted to ask about the state of democracy on the continent and the Biden administration's plans for addressing some of the more, I think, concerning trends that we've been seeing. We know from a lot of the Afrobarometer polling that demand for democracy is going up among young people across the continent, who, as we've already discussed, now represent the majority of that ever-growing population. But access to democracy is going down. We've seen Freedom House numbers in this past year that 21 of 54 countries have seen a democratic retrenchment on the continent just recently. And in the last month, we've talked already about the coup in Mali, but we can't forget the coup that happened in Chad and a host of other kind of concerning elections across the continent in the last few months since the Biden administration came in, from Congo-Brazzaville to Benin to Djibouti. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you are approaching this challenge, especially in light of President Biden's commitment to reinvigorating democratic states around the world and rolling back the trend towards authoritarianism, which sadly Africa is not immune from. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Good to see you this morning. President Biden has placed strengthening democracy, both at home and abroad, at the center of our foreign policy. And this will play out as in the commitment to hosting a summit for democracies, which is tied to a substantive agenda and presents a unique opportunity, as you said, for countries to really combat authoritarianism and to stand up for democratic ideals. And countries will be asked to join the United States. You know, we're holding ourselves to the same bar that we hold others, but to sign up to a list of shared commitments and democratic goals. But this will ultimately lead to support for fighting corruption and combating authoritarianism and advancing human rights and the respect for the rule of law. And there will be several African countries that will be present at this summit. So more to come on that front. Stay tuned.
As we can see, you highlight the word democracy because we heard a lot about governance, and it seemed like we gave up, on the democratic front. So I'm happy to see that democracy sounds good to you, like a meaningful word. Now, another senior fellow at the Africa Center on the economic front. It's Aubrey Ruby. She's not only our prosperity pillar lead, but she is also co-founder of Insider and the Africa Export Network, and is an active investor in African startups, involved on the African continent and its future since 20 years now, I think. And she has a question on commercial policy. Up to you, Aubrey.
Thank you, Rama. And really, it's a pleasure, Dana, and to formally welcome you in this role. One of the great things of working on Africa policy, especially on the commercial policy, is its bipartisan nature. And what you've seen over the years is that administrations tend to keep the programs that their predecessors created, but then launch flagship programs. And so, as you said, you want to kind of increase and improve on Prosper Africa. But I want to know whether you see any kind of flagship Biden administration Africa commercial policies in the works, and if so, what they would look like, and what kind of changes you would like to see in Prosper Africa.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thanks for the question. Yes, as I mentioned, we are re-envisioning Prosper Africa as a genuine partnership based on a commitment to the shared prosperity. And with the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, we are looking to have an element of Prosper that would help support that, something that, that was created by partners on the continent as identified as a clear need. So we're looking to support African businesses, U.S. and African businesses, and to increase, to fuel that economic growth, job creation, of course, and greater participation in Africa's future. We aim to build on the successive administrations to increase economic engagement with the continent, including through the African Growth and Opportunity Act, the Doing Business Campaign, and also Power Africa. But we also have plans to advance sustainable new trade policies that foster fair and equitable business climates, but also to seize upon the new opportunities posed by what I mentioned earlier in terms of the digital economy, and looking at something that will address sort of the growing youth population in Africa, and the access to markets, and the need for strong digital infrastructure on that front. So stay tuned. There's going to be more to come on that.
Thank you, Dana. Last but not least, it is related to just what you just said in your dialogue with Aubrey. Didier Akwete, he is our very new senior fellow. I'm very happy to see him there on a very, very important and challenging topic. It's about these youth, these African youth. Mm-hmm. People say the African youth is a bomb, because it's so difficult to find jobs for these millions of young Africans who are coming more and more. And DJ is president and the founder of the Africa Search Group, the first international recruitment and human resources consulting firm specializing in Africa. He's very well known on the African continent as something who fights every day to find jobs for young African people. And now I'm very happy to see he joined the Africa Center at the Atlantic Council. He would like to have a dialogue with you on this topic. DJ?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rama. Good morning, Ms. Banks.
Good morning.
I think you just touched on the point of the youth. It may be, taking time bomb or an opportunity. And right now, it seems that we have to create something between 15 and 20 million jobs every year for the African youth, but we hardly create 3 to 5 million. So there may be a major risk if you don't create more opportunity for this youth and those young graduates. So my point is, well, as you know, the African-based economy is based on more natural resources than manufacturing and industries. So one of the key objectives is to industrialize the continent and provide more skills to the African youth. So I wanted to know if in the new administration there is a specific policy and strategy to partner with Africa in how to industrialize the African economies and reskill all these African youth. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and a pleasure to meet you. Yes, the strength of many societies, and particularly Africa, given the anticipated size of the youth population, is in its young people. They truly are the future of Africa. And this administration will continue, as previous administrations have for the past 10 years, with our supporting our Young African Leaders Initiative. I have personally met so many impressive and powerful and dynamic alumni of the Young African Leaders Initiative around the continent, from Tanzania to Togo and in South Africa. I mean, really bright, innovative, young people who are now at 10 years on of the initiative, but now leading in their fields, whether it's in business or in government or in civil society, and leading to the strengthening of their society. There was one young man I can remember who used, a digital platform and created a digital platform called GovChat. He's out of South Africa in Cape Town, and he's using that and using it worldwide and promoting it with governments to demand more accountability from the people of their governments through this online platform centered around service delivery by governments to their people. So that's just one of hundreds, perhaps thousands of examples of how African youth are leading the continent and how we are providing the foundation and sometimes just the boost and the inspiration that they need to help lead in their countries and in their society and at some levels globally.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. Yeah, of course, these young people, they are not a burden. They are future clients, consumers, leaders.
Right.
Who knows? Thank you, Didier, for this relevant question. We are going to close in a few minutes. So let me just, Ms. Banks, ask you a last question, maybe more personal, about the American diaspora of the African continent, if I may say things like this. All people of African descent, whether they live in North or South America, the Caribbean, or any other part of the world, are Africans and belong to the African nation. Who say that? Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana. And my question is very simple. Do you feel African? What is African in you? Do you think a bridge could be built between Africa and its American diaspora once again?
Absolutely. I absolutely feel an African connection. It started from a very young age when I would hear my aunt and uncle conversing in French. My uncle lived and worked in Madagascar in the 60s with NASA, met his Malagasy wife there, and I would go to visit them or see them at family engagements and hearing them engaging in French and talking about all of their travels and working with embassy and working at NASA. And it really sparked something in me. And from then I can say that's where my connection and I think my fascination with the continent began, and it continued throughout my life. And I know that there are many other African Americans who feel the same, and that's who we would like to work with, the diaspora, to get them to become more engaged economically as well as culturally with the continent, because it makes for stronger policy.
You make things easier for me because there is someone who admires a lot, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She's coming for the next conversation today, this morning. She just said, I am an African woman. And that's something, that would be heard on the African continent. So thank you for that. Thank you, Didier. Thank you, Abdul. Thank you, Cameron, Aubrey, President Admasio. Thank you, General Jones. Thank you, Ambassador Hilda, to the African Union, of the African Union. We are arriving at the end of this exciting conversation. Dana, thank you for this insightful conversation, for your answers. We look forward to seeing the administration's Africa policy continue to form, and we hope to stay engaged with your office. The center launches important initiatives. We could have spoken so many things, inclusive climate. We will talk about, once again, development in Sahel, creative and cultural industries, among others. But allow me to thank everyone, all the staff here, Luke and Alisa, for their tireless work every day. And thank you to our audience. We hope you'll stick around for a signature front page conversation with U.S. Representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, starting at 11 a.m. For those watching this live event on YouTube, please click on the link in the description below the video to tune into this next session. You can also tune in through our events page, the Atlantic Council's Facebook, or through the Africa Center's Twitter. But first, allow us to reintroduce the Africa Center with this video message. Welcome to the Africa Center, the first regional center of the Atlantic Council, founded in 2009 by General Jones, former National Security Advisor to President Obama. We are a team of globally recognized experts from Africa and the United States. We are deeply convinced of the strategic importance of the African continent. We are united by a goal to support the African Center. For us, the continent is a land of opportunity. It's not a land of risks. Africa is the oldest continent, yet the youngest in age, and soon to be the largest by population. It is home to the fastest growing economies, the largest free trade area, and the biggest digital revolution. Above all, no global challenge can be solved without this generation of Africans. Through the Africa Center, the Council focuses on 4 key pillars. The rule of law. Security and governance challenges exist, of course, but Africa has its own democratic traditions which will inspire the world. African prosperity. We highlight green growth, digital currencies, and trade in our efforts to advance business and investment in African markets. The creative and cultural industries. We recognize the value of fashion, arts, film, gaming, music, entertainment, sports, and Nollywood. With Africa, soft power is the new hard power. Multilateralism. Africa's due representation in multilateral organizations is critical. African voices can bring innovative solutions to the world, but African nations need more seats in international bodies. Many think that Africa needs the world's support, but would be surprised to realize that the world needs Africa. As Africa grows in its strategic importance, the Africa Center will be at the forefront. We will bring together allies and partners for a more prosperous and secure future. You are our guests, as attendees, as participants, as panelists. This is your Africa Center. With you, we will create a new African narrative rooted in mutually beneficial partnerships. Africa, your time has come.